So the beating of war drums, the neighing of the horses, and the roaring sound of the elephants filled Arjun with the excitement of war. But as he neared the Kaurava army, he saw the grand old man Bhishma. He saw his gurus Drona and the Kripa. He saw his cousins, brothers, and other relatives. All of them were dear to him. All of them were the revered one. Arjun hesitantly asked Krishna, "Should I kill my own Keith and kin for my selfishness? Should I kill my own friend just to gain victory over them? I am unable to do it." So saying, he quickly put down his weapon. To remove this deep agitation in Arjun's mind, Krishna spoke to him softly. "Arjun, war is inevitable. This may seem to be a cruel, unjust way to you. But have you forgotten the grave injustice meted out by the Kauravas? Such a conflict arises between human beings upon this world. Who are you to kill? Who are they to be killed? It is God's will. We are only empowered to carry out our duties assigned to each of us." Krishna further explained the various means of attaining God. He preached Arjuna about the path of devotion and path of duty. To fight for justice is duty. Do your duty without desiring for reward or fame was the gospel of Sri Krishna. This is known as the Bhagavad Gita, held as the treasure of knowledge for the entire mankind. Lord Krishna then exhibited his Vishwarup and said, "I am the beginning and the end of all beings upon this world. I am the omnipresent and omnipotent. Without my being, nothing lives. I am present in the plant, I am in the tree, in the atmosphere, in the sky, and everything else upon the earth. I protect those who believe in me. O Arjuna, hence give up the doubts and that haunt you. Pick up the weapons and fight." Listening to Gitopadesha, preaching of Gita, a new light of knowledge dawned upon Arjuna. The Supreme Being is the puppeteer, and we are mere puppets in his hand. It is now my duty to fight, and this is the path of duty. Thus Arjun readied himself for the war. The Kurukshetra war was waged for 18 days. During these days, a lot of blood was shed. Each day witnessed the death of thousands of soldiers. Thousands of soldiers, horses, and elephants formed on to dust. The war went on. It provided ample opportunity to the soldiers and to the commanders to prove their worth. Every evening at sunset, a bugle was blown to indicate the end of the day's battle, and each night the losses in terms of men, animals were reviewed, and the next day's plan of action finalized. Bhishma alone waged the war for 10 days. Abhimanyu faced Bhishma the first day of the war, but had to concede defeat at the hands of Bhishma. Virata's children who came to help Abhimanyu were killed. Arjuna would make up his mind each day that he would kill Bhishma, but did not have the heart to kill the grand old man who was a father figure to all of them. Bhishma's attack was so devastating that it looked as if a ball of fire was engulfing the enemies. Because of Bhishma, the death toll in the Pandava camp was very high. Hence Krishna often urged Arjun to kill Bhishma, but seeing Arjun's hesitancy in doing so, on the 9th day of the war, Krishna jumped out of the chariot with the intention of fighting with Bhishma. But Arjun reminded him about his decision of not taking part in the war directly. Arjun promised Krishna that Bhishma would be slain the next day. It was neither easy nor possible to kill Bhishma. The 10th day of the Kurukshetra war dawned. At the instance of Krishna, the Arjun made Shikandi, the daughter of Drupada, stand in front of him. He then attacked Bhishma, upon which Bhishma did not wish to fight against a woman and decided to lay down his weapon. As he could command his own death, he also decided to welcome death. So he did not retaliate against Arjun's arrow. With arrows sticking all over his body, Bhishma Pitama fell down, but his body could not touch the ground because of these numerous arrows sticking out. It was thus a bed of arrows for Bhishma. The battlefield suddenly was quiet. A ceasefire was announced. The Pandavas and the Kauravas rushed to the side of Bhishma. Duryodhana tried to place a pillow under Bhishma's head, but the great man refused. He wanted a pillow befitting a war. Arjun understood at what he meant and created a support of for Bhishma's head and striking 3 arrows on the ground and under the head. Even at that moment, Bhishma advised Duryodhana to make a peace with the Pandavas, but Duryodhana refused yet again. Bhishma felt very thirsty. At once, Arjun shot an arrow into the earth. Poor water gushed out from the hole like a fountain and reached Bhishma's lips gently. It looked as Bhishma's mother Ganga had surfaced from the ground to bid farewell to her noble son. Bhishma then said, I will lie here till the sun travels northwards. My soul will then depart. His body thus lay in the battlefield. The day's fighting was over. Duryodhana returned to his camp to decide upon the next supreme commander in place of Bhishma. The loss of Bhishma was a great setback to Duryodhana. Karna was appointed the supreme commander for the 11th day of the war. But Karna, out of respect for Drona, gave up the position in his favor. The 11th day of the war, bugles were sounded and conches were blown. Duryodhana had instructed Drona that he should imprison Yudhishthira as the day's trophy. He intended to banish the Pandavas to the forest forever. Drona reluctantly agreed to this, and as he felt obliged to the Kauravas. When Drona launched a direct attack on Yudhishthira, Arjun tried to move closer to his brother, but was stopped by Susharma's children, who was fought bravely like a ray of lightning. Arjuna was at the side of Yudhishthira one moment, and the next moment was fighting against Susharma's children, Sampatakas. On the 12th day, Drona planned to capture Yudhishthira by engaging Arjun in a fight with the Sampatakas, but in swift move. Arjuna rescued his elder brother. That night, Duryodhana admonished the elderly Drona for his failure to prevent Arjuna from rescuing his brother. Dronacharya was very hurt by these words. This made him all the very determined to seize Dharmarya and to gain victory for the Kauravas. He therefore rearranged his army around Yudhishthira so that he could be easily captured while Arjun would be busy fighting against the Sampatakas. This formation was called Chakravyuh, an extremely difficult maze, and only Krishna, Arjun and his young son Abhimanyu knew how to break the maze. But Abhimanyu only knew how to get in. Since Arjuna and Krishna were away from the spot, the responsibility of penetrating the maze fell upon the young and valiant soldiers of Abhimanyu. He therefore told his uncle that they were to follow him. Yudhishthira at first hesitated, but since there was no other option, he agreed. With the blessing of his uncle, Abhimanyu drove his chariot and penetrated the maze. But the Pandavas were prevented from following Abhimanyu by Jayadratha, the king of Sendev. As a result, Abhimanyu was surrounded by enemies. He fought alone, but could not withstand the attack very long. Dushasana cut Abhimanyu's limbs one by one. Karna pierced the boy's body with his arrow, and Jayadratha drove his spear through the inert body and finally killed him. The entire ground was covered with Abhimanyu's blood, and the sun also set, and as if unable to witness the scene. The Kaurava camp was overjoyed with Abhimanyu's death, and on the other hand, Pandava army was plunged into sorrow. Arjuna, who returned to the camp after defeating the Sampava, was met with mourning and immense grief. When he heard about the way in which his dearest son was killed, he swore, before the sun sets tomorrow, I shall kill Jayadratha, who was the cause of my son's death. In his grief, Arjuna also accused Yudhishthira and Bhima of being irresponsible and having been a youngster like Abhimanyu to penetrate the Chakravyuh. He could not even console his wife Subhadra and Atra, Abhimanyu's wife. News of Arjun's woe reached the Kauravas. Duryodhana was very eager to protect Jayadratha against Arjuna by waging the war himself till the evening. There were a severe fight between the two stalwarts, Arjuna and Duryodhana, and none could gain an upper hand. The day was drawing to an end. Duryodhana thought that since Arjuna could not keep his vow to kill Jayadratha the same evening, Arjuna would out of shame and commit suicide, and victory would be Duryodhana's. To meet the situation, Krishna covered the rays of the sun with this hand and made it look as if the sun had set. Jayadratha, feeling confident that he had survived the day, He had survived the day, emerged out of his hiding. On Krishna's instruction, Arjuna hit Jayadratha with his bow, chopping off his head. The war was continued even at night when Bhima killed 7 of Duryodhana's brothers. In retaliation, Karna used his Shakti weapon on Ghatotkacha, Bhima's son, and beheaded him. Ghatotkacha was the second son to die for the Pandavas. When the war raged on for the 15th consecutive day, Krishna expressed his opinion that unless and until Drona was killed, the Pandavas would never be victorious. Hence he suggested to Arjun, shout loudly in the midst of the fighting that Drona's son Ashwatthama has been killed. The grief-stricken Drona will lose all his enthusiasm to fight, and thus it will be easy for us to defeat him. Arjuna did not like his idea of deceiving his guru. Krishna then put forward this idea to Bhima. Bhima killed an elephant by name Ashwatthama. Bhima killed an elephant by name Ashwatthama and cried out loud that Ashwatthama died. When Drona heard this, he at once knew that this was Krishna's trick. He therefore announced that he would believe his son to be dead only if ever truthful Yudhishthira were to say it. So at the instant of Krishna, Yudhishthira called out Ashwatthama, Hath Kunja. Ashwatthama, the elephant, has been killed. Just as he was saying it, Krishna blew the conch so loud that Drona only heard that Ashwatthama had been killed. Since Yudhishthira had uttered this word, Drona took it to be true, threw down his weapons and sat down on the ground. His beloved son's death had robbed him all the will to live. Seizing this opportunity, Drishtadyumna, in retaliation against Drona, humiliation of his father, drew out of his sword and severed Drona's head. On hearing the news about his father's death, Ashwatthama went berserk and brandishing his sword and attacked the enemy and killed many soldiers. He swore that he would wipe out the entire Pandava race to avenge for his father's death. Drona's death doubled Duryodhana's grief. He then installed Karna as the supreme commander. The war went on relentlessly with a great deal of the death and destruction. There was intense fighting between Bhima and Dushasana. Recalling what Dushasana had done to Draupadi, Bhishma anger exploded like a volcano. He leapt upon Dushasana and lifted him up and rising, using all the strength and thrashing him down, and Bhima then tore the Dushasana arm and sucked the blood from his body. Dhritarashtra was grief-stricken when he heard about the gory way in which his son was killed, but it was too late to stop the war. The 16th day of the battle witnessed and Karna and Arjun confront each other. Shalya was Karna's charioteer. The battle between the Karna and Arjun was a clash of epic proportion. Determined to kill Arjun, the Karna used an arrow which was a deadly weapon, swing serpents. As it was about to strike Arjun, Krishna pushed the chariot down into the earth by a few inches. The arrow could only knock Arjun's headgear. The arrow of serpent returned to the Karna and wanted to be reused on Arjun. But Karna called the promise made to Kunti that he would not use a weapon twice. Arjun was thus saved. As fate would have it, Karna's chariot got stuck into the soaked mud. His chariot Shalya refused to get down and lift the chariot up. And Karna, you have so often boasted about your strength. Prove it now, he said in rage. With no other alternative, Karna jumped out of the chariot and tried to lift the chariot single-handed. Arjuna took the advantage of the situation and poured a rain of arrows on Karna. Please do not take undue advantage of me, O Arjun, cried out Karna. Have you forgotten the code of conduct that you cannot attack an unarmed man? Red in face, Arjun hurriedly put down his quiver full of arrows. But Krishna laughed and scolding and said, Yes, Arjun, have you forgotten the Karna was among those who hacked Abhimanyu to death? What was Karna doing when Draupadi, a defenseless woman, was disrobed in front of everybody? Just don't waste your time. Don't lose this chance. Use your arrows and upon Karna. Arjun saw wisdom in Krishna's advice. He therefore used his arrows one after the other on Karna. Karna forgot all the mantras he had no utter above before using any arrow. Parshurama's curse was upon him. The generous Karna had already donated his arm and earrings to Indra. His strength had subsided since he had already used the Shaktiya weapon to kill the Ghatotkacha. He did not have a suitable weapon against Arjuna. To add his fortune, the wheel of the chariot just did not budge. Arjuna used his most powerful arrow, which instantly severed Karna's head. A glorious light emitted out of the Karna's body and submerged into the sun. Sun god had taken away his valiant son. On witnessing this scene, Arjuna realized that Karna was an extraordinary person. Instead of feeling happy, Arjuna felt bereaved. He returned to his camp in a subdued mood. Duryodhana grieved over his dearest friend's death for hours. None of the surviving Kauravas could console him. He felt that a terrible vacuum had been created in his army with the deaths of Drona, Karna. Seeing his anguish, Kripacharya tried to advise him, Drona, at least now make peace with the Pandavas, survive with Holocaust and enjoy the rest of your life. Even at that moment, Duryodhana turned a deaf ear to the advice. He appointed Shalya as the general with orders to fight till the very end. Shalya fell a victim of Yudhishthira's arrow on the 18th day of the battle. On the same day, the wicked Shakuni was killed by Sahadev and the surviving brothers of Duryodhana by Bhim. Only Kripa, Ashwathama and the Duryodhana were left. At this stage, Duryodhana belatedly realized that he could not escape from the enemies. So he hid in a pool of water. The Pandavas reached the spot shortly and challenged him to come out of his hiding. When he emerged out of water, Duryodhana picked out his mace and fought with Bhima. Both of them were equal in strength and skill, and combat raged for a long time. Bhima, who found it impossible to knock down Duryodhana, looked at Krishna, who made a sign of slapping the thigh. Bhima recalled the woe that he had made the Duryodhana's humiliated Draupadi. When the Pandavas had lost the game of dice, Duryodhana had called Draupadi his maid and had taunted her to sit on his lap. The enraged Bhima had vowed the Duryodhana that I will kill you by breaking your thighs. Such a method of killing an enemy was contrary to the rules of wars. Bhima recalled the grave injustice meted out by the Duryodhana, and dealing a powerful blow with his mace, he thrashed Duryodhana's thigh into a pulp. Howling with pain, Duryodhana fell down and Bhima kicked him hard on the head. Stop, Bhima, cried out his elder brother. It is not right on your part to kick a king in the head. On hearing this, Duryodhana, talking with a great difficulty, told his cousin Yudhishthira. You may have scored a victory over me, but don't forget that this is an unethical victory for you. Arjun hid himself behind a woman to defeat the great Bhishma. You uttered a lie to make Drona give up fighting. Karna was killed when he was unarmed, and now Bhima has broken the rules of war and thrashed my thighs with a mace. After all these events, you have finally managed to call Bhima's act of kicking my head as adharma, unethical. Let him do whatever he wants to. It will only belittle him. I am an emperor. I am not a coward. I shall die a brave death after waging the war. A valiant world is awaiting me. My kingdom is now yours. You have paid a heavy price to gain me. I am doubtful whether it will bring you peace of mind. Yudhishthira was filled with sorrow at the thought that his cousin was to die shortly. Krishna was nonchalant. The Pandavas returned from the battlefield in a state of melancholy. Duryodhana battled for his life. This was a tragic story created due to his own greed. Ashwadhama, who could not tolerate the Duryodhana's condition, vowed before him, O Emperor, do not think that you are the only one to hate the Pandavas, for I cannot forgive them for their description and killing my father. I shall avenge by beheading the Pandavas one by one. Duryodhana, even when he was in the deathbed, was delighted to hear this. Go, Guru Putra, I am appointing you as the general. Show me the dead bodies of the Pandavas before I die. It was a dark and terrible night. Ashwathama came to know that the Pandavas were fast asleep in their camp. Actually, instead of the Pandavas and Krishna, the Panchalas, that is Draupadi's 5 sons, and Drishtadyumna had chosen to sleep in the tent. Without even bothering to look at their faces, Ashwathama butchered all of them and hastened to Duryodhana's side. But by that time, Duryodhana had already died. In the morning, Drupada was in Kusuma. When she heard about the killing of her 5 sons, she went to Yudhishthira and told him that if Ashwathama was not killed, she would commit suicide in the infernal pyre of her children. The Pandavas went in search of him and found him hiding in a place near the river. When he saw them approaching, Ashwatthama charged a blade of grass with a deadly mantra and threw it towards them. They avoided the blade of grass, but in order to wipe out their race, it tried to hit the womb of Tara, who was pregnant with Abhimanyu's son. Lord Krishna at once stopped the grass with blade with his hand and thus protected Attara's womb. Frustrated by this, Ashwatthama escaped to the forest and he was never to be seen again. The battle in Kurukshetra was over. But Yudhishthira did not find peace of mind anyway. When the entire Hastinapur mourned over the loss of their kith and killed in the war, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari wept over the loss of their sons and Kunti over the Karna's death. The blind Dhritarashtra had the misfortune of cremating his own children, but still he hated the Pandavas and especially Bhima. So when the Pandavas came to him to pay their respect, Dhritarashtra embarrassed them one by one. Without there being any love or affection in those embarrasses, when he was about to embarrass Bhima, the wise Krishna pushed Bhima aside and placed a metal statue before the blind king. The blind but very strong king hugged the statue so tightly that it was reduced to pieces. He thought Bhima was dead, but when he learned the truth, he suppressed his anger and blessed the Pandavas. When Kunti told her sons that Karna was her eldest son, the grief-stricken Yudhishthira performed the funeral ceremony for Karna. The Pandavas also performed the last rites for all the other departed souls and bathed in the Ganga to atone for their sins. Subsequently, Krishna to Yudhishthira to Bhishma was still alive. Acha. Krishna to Yudhishthira to Bhishma who was still alive. The grand old man gave his blessings for the coronation of Yudhishthira as the emperor of Hastinapur. He also advised the new emperor about the path of Dharma. Shortly afterwards, when the sun was in the northerly direction, Bhishma invited death and breathed his last. Yudhishthira ruled over Hastinapur well, and his reign brought peace and prosperity to the citizens. The Pandavas looked after Dhritarashtra and the Gandhari with love, affection, and respect. Yudhishthira even performed their last rites when they died. Krishna ruled over Dwarka for 36 years after the battle of Kurukshetra, before he completed his avatar incarnation. These events created a detachment towards life among the Pandavas and Draupadi. They therefore crowned Parikshit, son of Abhimanyu, as the emperor of Hastinapur and proceeded towards heaven. A dog followed them, kept them company all along. When they reached the gates of heaven, the dog was not allowed entry. So Yudhishthira and the others did not want to get into the heaven and preferred go to the Naraka, the hell. The Devas were pleased with the Pandavas for their love towards the animal and let them go into heaven. Jai.